I'm Jacob Soboroff. You're watching HuffPost Live. Fox News contributor Dick Morris made headlines last year when he predicted a landslide victory for Mitt Romney. Well, we all know how that turned out. Now Fox has confirmed that it won't be renewing Morris's contract. Here to talk about this, HuffPost reporter Christina Wilkie. Hey, Christina.
Hi.
What's happening? So what happened? So Dick Morris was, one of the stars of Fox News. He went out on a limb saying Romney was going to walk away with it. Is that why he's on his way out?
In some ways, Dick Morris was the fall guy for a lot of other Republican strategists who predicted Romney landslides. They predicted that the GOP would take the Senate. There were all sorts of faulty predictions coming through the entire fall. And Dick Morris has happened to be the most public, save maybe for Karl Rove, sort of meltdown on election night when he challenged the Ohio results. But Dick Morris, unlike Karl Rove, doesn't have a super PAC behind him. He really was just a television commentator, and he's not as involved in the process. And it's not surprising, but it's also it's kind of what happens when the entire party makes a pretty big mistake and one guy ends up taking the heat.
He famously. Dick Morris famously sort of said there's going to be an enthusiasm gap in this election. African Americans and other election groups are going to turn out in smaller numbers than they did in the previous presidential election. Mm-hmm. Were there any repercussions for him saying that before this news that he's going to be leaving Fox News?
In the greater pantheon of things that far-right Republicans said during this election and the 2008 election, I don't think it stood out. I think in the pantheon of ideological sentiments, for Morris to say that he thought that the 2008 voter turnout was an anomaly and that it would return to normal, which is how he kind of phrased it, it seemed to be a scientific way to get excited about a potential Romney win. Obviously, what we saw was that, and Morris even said himself, he said, "Oh, Obama won by a squeaker." Well, Obama did not win by a squeaker. He won by more than 5 million votes.
Millions and millions of votes, yeah.
5 million, yeah. So, so there was Morris attempting to backpedal, saying, I misread the number of the participation rates of minority voters. I imagined that they would be at the same levels that they were in 2004 when George Bush was running for a second term, which also doesn't make all that much sense.
It was definitely a bizarre thing to say.
Right.
Christina, few people actually had gotten to know Dick Morris on a personal level. You actually know him. Tell me a little bit about the man himself.
We wrote for the same paper. We wrote for a Capitol Hill newspaper called The Hill, and he was the opinion columnist, and he was a bit of a superstar. I mean, I didn't see him all that much around the office, but his columns on Capitol Hill, especially because he advised the Clinton administration, he's been in the game for 25 years. He is one of the people who's considered part of a brain trust, certainly that includes Karl Rove, but one of the guys who can talk about Republican politics without becoming overly ideological. He can say, I think this is going to happen. The numbers speak to this. And I think in some ways that exacerbated how terrible the disaster was for him this fall, when all of a sudden he made this very bold prediction about a Romney landslide, and it completely dissolved.
By the way, he does have epic YouTube videos. If you've never seen his YouTube videos, I'd recommend everybody go check them out. Final question I want to ask you is, he's given this interview on CNN. When you're in these contracts, he's tied up exclusively. He could never appear on CNN when he was on Fox. What do we expect him to talk about when he goes on CNN?
I expect him to talk about the state of the Republican Party. He's written a couple of columns recently. And it's funny, you'd think he might know better than to make big predictions. But just 4 days ago, he wrote a big column in my old paper in The Hill saying that if the economy collapses, then the Republican Party will take the Senate and has a wonderful chance in 15 or 16. But if the economy remains in this sort of stasis and the political atmosphere remains in the stasis that it's in now, that Republicans will lose the House. Again, I'm not sure that either of those are true, and I'm sure I get the sense that it reflects a lot of the pressure that's placed on media figures to continue making headlines and to continue saying things that are going to garner attention. And so here he is, you'd think, sort of 4 months after he's sort of nationally spanked for making this like bold, crazy sort of a prediction, and he's back in the prediction business. But I think Piers Morgan has actually made, especially in the past week, he's made great hay, for lack of a better word, out of bringing on conservatives, challenging them, having often contentious conversations. So I think the thing that we can expect the most tonight is good television.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Christina Wilkie,
Me
thank
too.
you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, and we'll end on a final comment here from BMO watching us live. Says, I'm sure he's going to have plenty to say about Hillary Clinton. Probably a lot more, too. All right, everybody, stick around. We got more coming up. Before we go tonight on HuffPost Live, the conversation continues. Stick around.